Well, good evening, everybody. This is a momentous occasion in some ways because we are done with the verb system and we're about to embark on a new section into participles, which is partly a verb and partly an adjective. We're going to start on page 288 of the book, which is a section overview. It's going to give us a preview of chapters 26 through 30. There won't be any homework for chapter 26, but we're just going to learn some of the basics about participles and what they are, not necessarily how to parse them yet. That'll be next chapter. So starting with page 288, it says, in this section, you'll learn the Greek participle. Participles are verbal adjectives. Once you can grasp that fact, the rest is pretty easy. You already know all the case endings they use. As an adjective, we learned the case endings for adjectives way back, I think it was chapter 7 or 8. And then their most basic translation is to append the ing to the verb. We're so accustomed to using English that way that we hardly even notice. But words like working, studying, giving, things like that. That's a verb with an ending ing in the English. Well, that makes it either a participle or a gerund. Now, gerunds are something we use, and this book is not going to talk about it very much, but because Greek doesn't have a gerund. But a gerund is a verbal noun, such as eating is my favorite activity. But that's a gerund.
Participle would be like, let's say thinking, and you would say someone is a thinking man.
That's right. That's an adjective, using it as an adjective. I only mentioned gerunds because they also end in ing. We're not going to study gerunds in the Greek because they don't have it. Instead, a Greek will use an infinitive. Where we would say seeing is believing, those are gerunds in English. They would say to see is to believe.
Interesting. So I think about the gerund thing. You said eating is my favorite activity. My favorite, I am happiest when I am an eating man.
Yeah,
that would be the
that's
use
a
of
participle
yeah.
used as an adjective. But there are other ways to use a participle besides as an adjective.
But that would be a way to say it without using a gerund.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about gerunds now. We might bring it up later.
Sure.
But what we're interested in is the ing that makes a verb into
something else here too. You pointed out the fact that the Greek would tend to use the infinitive in places where we would use gerunds.
That's right.
What I have seen too, as I look at as I've studied other languages, Russian and Spanish definitely both do the same thing, that they would substitute an infinitive where we use a gerund.
Yeah.
So I suspect English is kind of an outlier from what is most common in that respect.
We could do without gerunds in English. We just use the infinitive like everybody else does in the world.
I don't follow that, but would that pertain to Greek? Does Greek use the infinitive?
Yes, Greek does use an infinitive.
Well,
and we'll learn that after participle.
We'll get there.
We'll get there, yeah.
Okay.
Chapter 26. This chapter is an overview of all the participial grammar you will need to know. Participles are formed on verbs to which is added the participle morpheme. Now, he's talking about Greek now. The participle morpheme and then the case endings. The participle morphemes below are in blue. You see
they
the
are, yeah.
new tau there in the middle of Leontes. That's in blue.
Okay,
It's hard to see. It looks-
okay,
But
and-
that's a participle morpheme.
and
Nuances.
Omicron tau.
Means loosing. Another participle the same participle morpheme, pistusantis. Pistu is the root, meaning to believe, or I believe. Sa is the aorist, tense formative, if you remember that. And then participle morpheme after that, pistusant, and then S is the third person singular ending. Pistusantes means believing. And that's an aorist participle. And then pistucates, that's a perfect participle. The Omicron tau is the participle morpheme there.
Okay.
You might remember when we studied the perfect tense, they had the kappa as the tense formative and also the reduplication.
So,
Well, let's not worry about the form so much.
all
It's
right,
just
yeah.
telling us now, these are the participle morphemes,
So we have
nu
a-
tau and Omicron tau
All right, but the morphemes change based on
on the tense.
the tense.
Yeah.
And they need to go with the tense. Okay.
Okay, there are two basic types of participles, an adverbial participle and an adjectival participle. Now, he said up above that a participle is a verbal adjective. That's what it is. These two bullet points here describe how they're used. A participle, which is an adjectival verb, can be used as an adverb, and that's called an adverbial participle. It could also be used as an adjective. That's called an adjectival participle. So what it is different than how it's used. And we'll reemphasize
Yeah, no,
this
okay,
later
get it.
on.
I mean, we do this in English as well, right? It's similar.
Yes, and you'll see as we go along how the English handles it and the Greek does too. Here's another principle. There is no absolute time outside of the indicative system. Now, what we studied about verbs already has to do with absolute time, either present tense, past tense, future tense. Those are absolute time. But a non-indicative verbal form built on the present tense stem does not necessarily describe an action occurring in the present. A participle is a non-indicative verbal form. We'll get into this in more detail. I'm just trying to.
I'm just trying to think of what does that mean, non-indicative.
Okay.
So it's, well, yeah, because it's
All we've
not,
learned so far is
it's
the
the indicative
indicative mood. Yeah.
well, okay, because it's not really quite a verb. So I'm like,
The participle is not just a verb. It has a verbal part and an
Right.
adjectival part. But it also doesn't describe absolute time. It describes relative time. Time relative to the main verb.
Yes, but it says it's a non-indicative verbal form built on the present tense stem does not necessarily
I
describe.
wish he had said a participle
action
is a
occurring in the
non-indicative verbal form.
I don't, I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow what this means. And a non-indicative verbal form,
That's what a participle is.
that's what he's saying it is.
Yes, a participle is a non-indicative verbal form.
Right,
There are
it's-
other non-indicative verbal forms
yeah,
too.
it isn't a verb, it's just being created from a verb.
That's right.
Okay, this sentence
But it's
is
no
not
longer a verb
really
once it's been
helpful.
created.
Okay, it's not really a helpful statement to me because I'm not sure how a I mean, this isn't a new concept. It's a lot of words that express something that's fairly clear to us.
Okay,
It's not a verb, so it's not indicative.
right.
So I don't, that's one and two. it
Well,
doesn't
you
necessarily-
have,
So,
you have other moods of verbs besides the indicative. You've got an imperative, which is a command.
okay, but
And you,
okay, but the participle isn't indicating a mood at all,
true,
right?
but
It's
it's
really not.
connected with
I
verbs
guess-
somehow.
Would,
It
would this
is.
sentence make sense, would it be accurate and more clear if it said, since a participle is a non-indicative verbal form built on the present tense stem, it does not necessarily describe an action occurring in the
Yeah,
present.
I think that's,
Is that what he's trying to say?
yes, I think so. Just add those words.
So,
Since,
I mean, okay, so I looked, I cheated and looked at some things.
Okay.
So is it fair to say that, because it might not be, is there a difference in participles based on mood? Or is it just one form? And there isn't really mood indicated.
there is no mood indicated with a
Okay.
participle.
All right, thank you.
It takes the place of a mood, but we'll get to that in a
No,
minute.
that's fair. I just want to understand what we're up against. So then, but it does have different tenses.
Yes. The
And he says
the
it's
older
relative.
terminology, remember, I'm trying to get away from the imperfective and perfective
Yeah, that's fine.
terms.
I-
They used to call it a present participle and an aorist participle. And then the combinative participle used to be called a perfect participle. I'm going to use the older terms, which
all
the
right, he's
previous
gonna-
editions of the book, that's how I
Okay.
learned it.
He's going to describe some stuff here, so I guess we need to read that.
Okay. That, let me finish that paragraph there. Does not necessarily describe an action occurring in the present. The primary significance of verbs outside the indicative is aspect. Participles are outside the indicative mood. So,
Okay,
so is the imperative mood, and so is the optative mood, and so is the infinitive. All of those are non-indicative forms.
so what is aspect?
Aspect, you remember, he did talk about that a lot.
It would have
Verbs,
been beneficial if he had said before getting to this point that participles are not in the indicative mood.
I mean, how about
Okay.
just describe
Yeah,
what it is
that's my
instead of
point.
everything it isn't?
I know.
What are you trying to say? Because I'm sorry, I don't remember from 20 chapters ago what
Okay,
aspect is.
okay, aspect is, a verb has both time and aspect. The
Okay,
time is either past, present, or future.
right.
The aspect is either continuous aspect
Oh, okay.
or
Sorry.
undefined aspect, or
All right.
what's the other one? Completed aspect.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, some
So-
of which we actually
Now,
struggle to.
He's going to
discuss.
make the point throughout here, several different places, that a participle's main idea instead of time is aspect.
Sure.
Okay. All right, going down to the next 3 bullet points. These used to be called, instead of imperfective participle, it used to be called present participle. And that's the terminology I'm going to use. And then the perfective used to be called the aorist participle, and that's what I'm going to call it. And the combinative participle used to be called the perfect participle. Now, if you look,
Okay, perfective was called aorist.
that's correct.
So, okay, well, let's read the sentences.
Okay. The present participle, instead of imperfective participle, is built on the present tense stem. So present participle built on the present tense stem
That makes
and
sense.
indicates a continuous action. And we're used to that. Present tense does primarily indicate a continuous action.
Yeah,
I am going. The aorist participle is built on the aorist tense stem and indicates an undefined action. Well, remember the aorist tense when we were studying verbs, talked about an undefined action.
But completed.
It may have been completed, but it's not saying anything about it.
We usually use the simple past tense because
That's
its
right.
typical usage would be for that.
Yeah,
And conveys a general meaning to the English of a thing that's happened,
but
that's completed.
more than the aorist tense, the perfect tense denotes a completed action. The aorist tense would say, I went.
Yeah.
The perfect tense would say, I have gone. You remember that with the perfect
Yeah, that's
tense?
fine. And
Okay.
yeah, no, that's fine.
All right.
Okay, so then what's combinative?
Combinative, that's what I'm going to call the perfect participle. It's built on the perfect tense stem and indicates a completed action with ongoing effects. It's best if we, even though we translate Greek aorist as a past tense, simple past tense in English, it's best if we don't think in terms of time so much as undefined action.
Okay.
There are times when the aorist can be translated as a present tense.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
this? These things aren't going to occur in isolation. They're going to have an associated verb and
In the context.
a context, and it's going to be with a verb or a noun or both,
Mhm.
or it could be a pronoun.
Yeah,
And that combination of things, is it going to have agreement with one or both?
it's not so much a matter of agreement as relation to the main verb.
Well, no, my question, okay. So I wouldn't necessarily expect to see an aorist verb with an aorist participle?
You could have a combination of things.
Is that what this combination?
Yeah, let me
Because, okay,
here,
so
let me give you a
are these
concrete.
distinctions, including context, or are these distinctions about the actual forms that they change? Or
The
both?
context. Well,
This
you're
is
going to have to
including
learn
context.
forms.
Okay, but this is including context.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and you're going to have context. I want to show you an example that might. This.
Okay, no, that's fine.
We're going to learn.
I don't want to short circuit it. My mind's wondering, what are we talking about? Because immediately I know there's a context. If this is including the context, it starts to make more
It
sense.
will.
Otherwise, I'm wondering, how is the participle having all this going on while the verb's doing something else? Because I'm beginning to worry. Okay, all right.
Right.
All right.
Well, let's go on then. Now that's a preview of chapter 26. Chapter 27 is going to, well, chapter 26 really doesn't have any homework assignment. Chapter 27 will talk about how.
Yeah, we have right here the next
Yeah.
page.
When participles function as adverbs, the force of their meaning is directed toward the verb.
Okay.
They will agree in case, number, and gender with a word, normally the subject of the sentence, but not always. I mean,
Case,
they could
number,
agree with the
gender.
word that is the direct object.
Okay, all right.
But
So does
No,
the word with which they agree or in agreement indicate what word they're modifying? In most languages, that's the pattern.
It would be more accurate to say it agrees with its antecedent.
Right, that's
Yeah.
another way of saying
No,
exactly what I'm asking.
help me, here it is. I'm struggling a little with this. The man
And
died
so,
while
yeah, so
teaching.
that would be the indicator of what it's modified.
That's right.
Okay.
So let's look at the example.
An example.
Here we have,
Okay.
man died while
he-
teaching Koine.
He greeted them. Well, no. Okay.
Well, we have right here in the Greek, he has
Okay.
an example.
The man died while teaching Koine. Okay.
Did
Let me
death
not,
come?
I don't want to skip this sentence here. They will agree in case, number, and gender with a word, normally the subject. And-
What?
I was gonna say, you couldn't pick a different verb.
Well, all
Nouns
right.
couldn't.
I don't,
Died.
well, that's all right, yeah.
Died
Ed-
while
Ad-
teaching.
Adverbial,
Yeah.
Adverbial
Adverbial.
participles are always anarthrous. That means without the article. That is, they are never preceded by the article. There are participles that are preceded by the article, and those are called adjectival participles.
okay, it's adverbial,
Yeah, but we're talking now about adverbial participles
okay,
that are connected with
so,
a
yeah.
verb. Okay, the example. The man died while teaching Koine.
So what about that agrees with which words?
The word teaching is the participle,
Yes,
dideskon,
and we
and
translate that,
it's
wow.
related, or its antecedent is the man. Man is the antecedent of the participle teaching.
But it could, okay, so then how is that agreeing with
It will
man?
have the same ending as anthropos, that's nominative singular. The omega nu is also nominative singular.
Okay, all
So
right,
the
thank you.
ending of the participle has to agree with the ending of the noun that is the subject of the participle.
Now, this, but while, I mean, okay, so this is a ridiculous question in the context of this sentence, but if it were to agree with the koine, meaning that it modified koine.
Then it would have an accusative ending.
Okay, all right,
And
good.
he'll
good.
give us a sentence
Okay, yeah.
like that.
Good,
So
good,
let's
thank you.
what,
That's good.
okay. While participles do not designate absolute time, the time of the participle is relative to the time of the main verb. The present participle, change the word imperfective to present.
Present partial indicates an action occurring at the same time as the main verb.
Okay, now I'm going to say something here. An aorist participle normally has a time that's before the time of the main verb.
Okay, so we could,
No,
so-
excuse me,
so
after the time of the main
after
verb. Yeah.
time of the
Yeah.
main verb.
Instead of while, you'd use the word after. The man died after teaching Koine. That
So,
would,
okay, so this didasco,
dideskon is a present participle.
it's a present participle. Okay,
Now, if you wanted to say the man died after teaching
Okay.
Koine, you'd use an aorist participle. And
okay. Okay,
and that the tense of the verb apethana, that's aorist. Aorist tense, he died. And then teaching is happening, that's a present participle, so it's happening at the same time that he died. And so you
yes.
use the word while.
Right. and
While is an adverb. This is an adverbial phrase, adverbial participle phrase.
Yeah, okay, that's good, Carl, thank you, that's helpful.
Okay. To help you learn the forms of the participle, I will ask you to memorize 6 forms for each tense/voice combination. For example, here are the memory forms for the present active participle. Change the word imperfective to present. Okay. The nominative singular masculine ending is omega nu. That's what we just saw, didascon. The nominative singular feminine form is didaskusa, usa. Nominative singular neuter form is didaskon. Then the genitive, remember how we learned the genitive along with the nominative case ending for third declension nouns? For example, pontos. And the reason we learned the genitive singular along with it is because that oftentimes told us what the true root was. A better example is sarx. um, that's third declension. I'm having a,
It's just follow the same rules as third declension. I'm not following
Well,
what you're getting at.
well,
This looks like
no,
something
stop,
new
stop.
that
I'm
we
getting off track too much.
This
Uh,
looks like new stuff that we haven't quite
Yeah,
seen.
we're gonna need to learn, whenever we learn a participle.
There is no accusative form?
Yeah, there is. There's all of the different cases, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and vocative.
All right. It's
But-
down below. He just showed these two things
Yeah.
boxed.
He only wants us to learn the first two, nominative singular and genitive singular,
Okay.
because we already know how to form the dative and accusative and the plural based on those two. If
Okay, sorry, he just wants us to learn those. Okay,
there's the full paradigm, and you notice the endings for the masculine and the neuter are third declension endings. And see the three up above the masculine and the neuter? That tells us the pattern is a 3-1-3.
yeah, okay.
It follows the third declension for the masculine and the neuter, but it follows first declension for the feminine.
It's true. So these endings are like this for all present participles?
That's true.
Okay, well, good. Okay, something that's not
And in
really.
fact, here, I've given you, I think it's
So it's, okay,
in your handout. Let's have that handout that I gave you.
here you go.
Yeah, let me show you.
Oh.
I included this just to help you.
Okay, show the camera.
Sorry.
That's
Oh.
all right.
Well, yeah, I'll show the camera. There's a page here that has all forms of the, how did I arrange this? Oh, this isn't the whole thing. It's aorist. I'm sorry, I didn't bring the rest of it, but I wrote them out. I'll have it for you next week. And I also included in here my parsing codes. You may have seen this before.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, well, he gives us the full paradigm for the present active participle.
Okay,
Then the next page,
okay. So we have the full paradigm. I'm not sure why we wouldn't just dig in and expect to use that since.
we will be using
Oh,
it,
okay, why did?
but not for chapter 26. We'll do that in chapter 27.
Okay,
There's no homework associated with chapter 26.
okay,
Then chapter 28 on page 290, the aorist participles, change the word perfective to aorist. Aorist participles are built on the aorist tense stem and indicate an undefined action. Because there is no absolute time, the augment does not occur. So that with the verb, you have the augment because it is past time. But with the participle, it doesn't have absolute time, so no augment. You remember the
Okay.
augment is epsilon in front of the stem
for aorist.
for aorist, yeah.
Okay, I don't, that's fine. I'm not sure what it has to do with absolute time, but okay.
Well, because the verbs do occur in absolute time. The participles occur in relative time because they're connected with the time of the main verb.
I understand that these statements are both true, but it doesn't make sense to me that they're somehow connected. because we don't know enough to know that.
That's right. Just remember that.
Okay,
Okay. Then for the
that's fine.
aorist participles, you have, let's see, for the active, middle, and passive forms of that participle, you have the root, and then the tense formative, saw for the active and middle, and theta epsilon for the passive. That's the second piece of information. The third piece of information is the participle morpheme. And nu tau is the same combination of letters that you had for the present participle. The middle has meno, and then the passive has nu tau again. And then the appropriate endings. Okay, in terms of relative time, the perfective or aorist participle can indicate an action occurring prior to the time of the main verb, whereas the present participle, it occurred at the same time. The aorist participle occurs prior to the time of the main verb, but it can also indicate a simultaneous action like the present participle. You have to use the context of the verb to decide whether it's prior to or the same time as. The vast majority of times it'll be prior to. In chapter 29, when participles function adjectively, not adverbially, their form is the same as the adverbial participle, except that they tend to be articular. In other words, they are preceded by the article. And the vast majority of times, they do have the article. And here's an example. Ha didaskalos, the teacher of me, my teacher, and then the participial phrase is underlined here, ha legon ton to aklo. And it's translated, who is speaking to the crowd. So that whole phrase there describes the teacher. It's acting like an adjective.
Right,
And so that's why you have the article in front of the legon.
right, with the commas there, because we've inserted, he's sort of inserted two words. My teacher speaking to the crowd is an angel.
Okay,
I mean,
Yeah.
right, the English
Well,
doesn't demand those words either.
no, but this is a very common thing in all the translations. That's what you call a relative pronoun in conjunction with the participle. You could leave it out, but it's a little choppy. If my teacher speaking to the crowd is an angel.
It's grammatically correct. It just sounds odd to our
Yeah.
ears because it's not colloquial.
Yeah. Now, there are times when it will be okay to leave that relative pronoun out. But we're going to probably get used to using the relative pronouns along with participles.
And it's really, the article here is actually not a pronoun. We're using it that way because it sounds better in English, but the way we've done this with the article in other places, you could say my teacher, the one speaking to the crowd,
Exactly.
is
Yes.
an angel. I mean, that's what that definitive is telling us.
So that's how I like to do a two-pass translation.
Yeah, I'm
The
just trying
first
to
one,
understand how the Greek connect, how it's organized a little bit.
yeah, my first pass would be just like you said, the teacher of me, the one speaking to the crowd, is an angel. Then I would polish it up a little bit and say, my teacher, who is speaking to the crowd.
Yeah, in other words, just a literal word for word translation followed by
Well,
making it
I mean, the Greek is
uh,
my teacher, the speaking to the crowd.
a more colloquial translation.
Yeah, well, you'd have to insert the word one for
Well, but
the
the
man.
Greek, the Greek is my teacher, the teacher of me, the speaking to the crowd,
Mhm.
because they don't have all this other extra stuff.
Yeah.
All that's given to them in the structure
Mhm.
of their words, and it's really a lot to do with how they think.
That's right.
And
But the way we think
well, we
in
got to
English,
make English that makes some
Yeah.
sense to somebody.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 30 then is the last chapter on participles. Finally, perfect participles instead of the word combinative. Perfect participles are built on the perfect tense stem and indicate a completed action with ongoing effects. The participle pepistucates could be translated having believed. Okay, that's enough of a preview.
Okay.
Now, the introduction to participles in chapter 26. Somebody else want to read for a bit?
In this chapter, you will learn that a participle is an ing word, like eating, sleeping, procrastinating. A participle is a verbal adjective, sharing characteristics of both a verb and an adjective. As a verb, a participle has tense, let's see, present, aorist, or perfect, and voice, active, middle, and passive, or passive. As an adjective, a participle agrees with the word it modifies in case, number, and gender.
Okay, does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
Okay, now notice one thing on that third bullet point. Unlike verbs, it doesn't have person. It has tense, voice, but it doesn't have person like I, you,
Yeah,
and he
that would be a property that would be inherent
in the verb.
in
Yeah,
whatever, yeah,
yeah.
something else. But
Okay,
since it's no longer being a verb, then
we'll get to that later. Continue reading.
English. Participles are formed by adding ing to a verb.
Footnote.
More accurately stated, ing is added to form the active participle. Ed is added to form the passive participle. Moved by the sermon, they all began to cry. So that would be a passive
Yeah,
participle.
yeah.
Interesting.
The man eating by the window is my Greek teacher. Or after eating, I will go to bed. 26.2, participles are verbal adjectives. A participle has verbal characteristics. While eating, my Greek teacher gave us the final. In this example, eating is a participle that tells us something about the verb gave. The teacher gave us the final while he was still eating. The verb while specifies when the action of the participle occurred.
Yeah, adverb, not verb.
Oh, did I say?
Yeah.
Did I say verb?
Yeah.
Okay.
The adverb while. So what I call an adverbial clause. It tells you that it happened at the same time as the action of the verb.
Doesn't this, the English doesn't have, well, okay, I'm hearing this. All right, so while, if I didn't, in the English, if I didn't say while he was eating, wouldn't I understand it to mean this? I mean,
Eating, my Greek teacher gave us the final. Yeah, it would still mean the same
it would
thing.
mean the same thing in the English. I mean, this is more super clear, I suppose, but it's present tense. That ing is present
Yeah.
tense.
Yeah. Now, if that were, remember he talked about the passive. Oh, let's, why don't you continue reading?
Okay. A participle also has adjectival aspects. The woman sitting by the window is my Greek teacher. In this example, sitting is a participle telling us something about the noun woman.
Okay, that's an adjectival use.
Yeah, because it describes the woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, or which woman is maybe a better way.
Yeah, that's right.
It defines which woman. In English, the participle must be close to the word it modifies. Consider the sentence, while eating, he saw her. He is the one who is eating, not her, since he is closer in word order to the participle. If the sentence were, he saw her while eating, then she is eating. As you might guess, this will not be the case in Greek.
Yeah. The way they handle it in Greek is not word order, but case ending.
Yeah, declension.
Yeah.
And that's common in a lot of languages.
Mhm.
When a participle has modifiers, such as a direct object or an adverb, the participle and modifiers form a participial phrase. In translation, it is important to identify the beginning and end of the participial phrase, much like you do with a relative clause.
Or a prepositional phrase.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you got to group it together. And in that sense, word order does make a difference in Greek because the beginning and ending of the participial phrase should be all together in one.
I hope they don't do things and split up participial phrases with part of it somewhere, didn't get interrupted and then it continues.
I can't think of an example where I've seen that happen,
Okay,
but I wouldn't put it past the Greeks to do that.
okay,
Okay. Continue.
okay, Greek. Almost everything said above about the English participle applies to the Greek as well. It is important to realize this. The Greek participle can be somewhat daunting to learn if you do not see its many similarities with English. Also realize that it is essential to earn the Greek participle if you are to translate the New Testament with any proficiency. Participles are common and important, there being 6,658 participles in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Chapters 26 through 30 deal with the participle. Although they may seem lengthy, there is not that much new to learn in each one. Most of the grammar of participles is in this chapter, and the remaining 4 chapters deal largely with the forms of the participle. Happily, there are no new case endings to learn. Do not memorize the Greek forms in this chapter. They are just illustrations. Concentrate on learning the grammar. Formation. A participle can be built on any verb.
Luontes.
Luontes is built on the present tense stem of luo.
Pistusantes.
Pistuantes is built on the unaugmented aorist tense stem of pistuon.
Mhm. Pepistucates.
Epistucantis is built on the perfect tense of
Pistual.
That's a S. Man,
Yeah.
my eyes are blurry. I thought that was an O. Omega.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't help it. I was looking in the shadow of my own arm too, as I was trying to see that. To form a participle, you start with the tense stem of a verb, add a connecting vowel or tense formative, and then add the participle morpheme, new tau or omega tau,
Omicron.
omicron tau, and case endings.
So luontes,
Yes.
pistusantes, pepoicates.
Okay.
Okay.
These are all the
Verbal and
same.
adjectival characteristics. Because a participle is a verbal adjective, it shares the characteristics of both verbs and adjectives. As a verb, participles have tense, present, aorist, and perfect, and voice, active, middle, and passive. As an adjective, they agree with the word they are modifying in case, number, and gender.
And part of the difficulty is to figure out which word it modifies,
Mhm. And,
or
and,
which word is the antecedent.
and that will be the case, number, gender.
Yeah, it will agree in case, number, and
Yes.
gender with whatever the antecedent is.
Case, number.
Case like,
So the
Nominative.
case is really critical because there's not likely to be there's less likely to be several things of the same case that we might consider. But
yeah,
they could
less
easily both
likely.
be,
Yeah,
they could easily, all the considerations might be the same
yeah, you might
gender
have,
or number,
yeah.
but they should be different cases, right?
Well, you might have a case where he saw him eating the
Oh.
apple.
Yeah, but
Both
those are
he
different
and
cases,
him are masculine.
but they're different cases, yeah.
And so the ending of the participle eating would have a masculine singular, but which one is it? The he or the him?
Well, in the English, it's the he.
Yeah.
Well, he saw
No,
him,
it's the one that's
him
closest to.
but in the Greek, if we made it nominative instead of
Well, they would both be nominative,
accusative.
masculine, singular. He
What?
saw him. Well, no, I'm sorry, it would, no, him is
is
accusative.
accusative.
You're-
So the
you're
Greek
right.
would need to be, accusative to match the him.
Yeah, but it could also be nominative to match the he.
If, yeah, and in either order, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay.
I was gonna say, the only way you'd end up with the same case if it was some, I don't know, even then, I wonder if it would be the same case. If it was like he saw,
I
if
don't
you
think
made it
there is,
reflexive, he saw himself in the mirror. He saw himself
but
eating in
it's
the
not the
mirror.
same case.
Does that himself, does that become,
That's an accusative.
Still
that would be
accusative.
accusative because
him-
it's truly a reflection.
How about
Okay.
Peter and John saw Philip
Mhm.
coming to them.
Yeah.
Sure,
And
but now
the
we have-
ending
Yeah.
could be masculine singular, nominative masculine singular, and then it could be either Peter or John.
Okay, but that
But
seems
it's
like a pretty
Philip.
lousy construct. So the question with that one would mean, would the Greek use the singular or would they use the plural to mean both?
Well, if it did use the plural, then it would be both.
Well, that was my question, is what
Mhm.
would be the proper construct?
Mhm.
Because it would be
Yeah.
kind of strange unless you really stuck it right next to it so that by order, I mean, I guess the Greek could use order if you made it obvious.
Mhm.
I wonder if that's
Okay,
you know.
let's go on.
All right.
Two basic uses of the participle. Because a participle is a verbal adjective, it performs one of two basic functions depending upon whether its verbal or adjectival element is emphasized. If it is an adverbial participle, the action described by the participle is directed primarily toward the verb. This kind of participle is usually translated with an adverbial phrase, unsurprisingly.
Like while, or maybe even as.
Mm-hmm. Be the same meaning.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then if it is an adjectival participle, the action described by the participle primarily modifies a noun or pronoun. This type of participle is usually translated, unsurprisingly, as an adjectival phrase. The book lying on the window, still a little windowsill, belongs to Kathy. Context determines whether a participle is adverbial or adjectival. Its form does not vary.
That now its form does not vary is an important statement.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
wish he had said that an adjectival is almost always preceded by an article.
But is it possible that it's not?
Yes, it is possible. Because remember when we,
So let's look
Talked
at the
about-
example we had here. didn't we?
Hmm?
Yeah, okay. I have an example of one here somewhere. Oh, yeah, on page 290.
290,
My teacher Even if you didn't have the article there, in the my teacher example on 290, my teacher who is speaking to the crowd is an angel.
Mhm.
Uh, If you didn't have the ha,
Then it could be an adverbial participle.
but it doesn't, adverbial to what?
Well, you would if the ha, the article ha was missing, you would
Okay.
probably translate it, my teacher while speaking to the crowd is an angel.
That would be really odd.
Yes, it would.
Like
But
they're going to change into something that's not an angel, and they're no longer
Yeah.
speaking to the crowd.
but that's how it would be constructed. I mean, if it didn't have the article, you would normally translate it as a adverbial participle.
Right, so, okay, so you're saying, are there some examples that don't have the article that we,
I can't think of
No,
one.
or-
It's possible.
okay,
That's the way you distinguish whether it's adverbial or adjectival.
yeah, I'm gonna think that there's probably something about order that makes it clear too, even though it doesn't have to, but
Well, the article would be immediately preceding the participle.
well, yes, but if you had no participle, would you normally order it in that way?
Maybe
I
not.
don't know.
Let's wait till we get
That's
to
sort
the
of,
exercises.
you're just wondering, okay. But he did tell us already that it's gonna have an article, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he said that already. So now he's telling us they have the same form.
Although I think it would
Okay,
have been better if he had withheld that earlier when it didn't have any context and then would have put it
Mhm.
here instead of earlier.
yeah, it's fine. All right.
It would have been easier
So,
to digest.
so the
that
forms
way.
are the same, and now we know it has an article too. Okay. All right,
Okay, the verbal element of the participle. Tense. Participles can be built on present, aorist, or perfect tense stems. There also is a participle that is built on the future tense stem, but it occurs only 12 times in the New Testament. Advanced information in chapter 28.
We're not
which
even
I
going to
suspect we won't
consider,
do.
we're not going to consider future participles in this whole course. He lists them if you want to know, but
where are you? I'm sorry.
I was
in the
just
footnote.
wondering out
That
of
was the footnote.
curiosity, do a significant portion of those 12 appear in Revelation
Okay, there's a
or
list.
Matthew?
There's a list in chapter 28 of the future participles, if you're
I
interested.
guess we'll get there. All right.
Page 326 and 7, future participle. No, none of them occur in Revelation.
Interesting.
Just out of curiosity, I looked up each of those verses and looked at the translation of the Greek, and a lot of times it had to do with the idea of intending to do something,
Yeah,
which
and
is-
looking at
which is
the
future.
the pattern here is an awful lot of them seem to deal with Paul's missionary journeys.
Probably so. But let's not get bogged down in that.
Given the fact that so many that come in the last part of Acts.
Mhm.
Hmm.
The verbal element of the participle. Tense. Oh, no, I was already there.
Now change the names of those participles to present, aorist, and perfect instead of
Right.
imperfective.
Memorize the morphemes. I use the nominative plural forms since they show the unmodified participle morpheme. They are in blue.
Yeah.
Barely discernible blue, but a blue.
Yeah,
The imperfective participle.
I call that the present participle.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Change that. I'm just reading that.
We wouldn't have this
Present
confusion if
participle.
we had the earlier editions of this book.
The present participle, luantis, is Did I pronounce it right? Lewin?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Lewin test is built on the present tense stem of luo,
Okay.
s. The
Aorist,
aorist participle,
lucentis,
Perfect.
lucent test is built on the unaugmented aorist tense stem of luo, sa, s.
Mhm.
The
the perfect participle,
perfect participle,
lelucatus,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Lalu-
leluncon,
Lalucatus.
is built on the perfect tense stem of lu, ca, s.
Mhm.
Voice. A participle can be active, middle, or passive. Greek uses different participle morphemes for different voices.
And let me check something here. We have a master participle chart on this
Yeah. the
cheat
backside.
sheet, the backside, bottom left. And he shows what all the participle morphemes are for the present, aorist, and perfect, active, middle, and passive. And by the way, he uses the older terminology, which I like better.
Okay, I need to think. This is like requiring to think a little bit.
Okay, let's pause then if you want to. On the back side, bottom left.
Yeah.
You see,
The first- where are we?
It's easier to read colors.
I'm sorry. Which?
yeah, it's this
Oh,
one
on
right
far,
here.
on the far back. That page.
Yeah.
Master
Um,
participle
The
chart.
last column there has all the participle morphemes.
Hmm.
And they're the nominative and genitive of all three genders.
Okay.
The own and the ontos below it are the masculine, nominative masculine and genitive masculine. The usa and uses are the feminine, nominative and genitive. And the on and ontos are the neuter. So those are the 6 forms that he wants us to memorize for the present active. And then the 6 forms for the present middle / passive are the next 6. Amanos, amanu, amane, amanes, amanon, amanu.
So, okay, this color chart has these things like, so is,
Okay, the blue in that color chart is the connecting vowel.
yeah, and then we have,
The new is the case ending. Below it with the Omicron new,
okay,
the new tau is the participle morpheme, and the os is the genitive singular ending.
so there is no, okay. So in the present active, there is no morpheme ending on the nominative. There's no morpheme.
Right. That's because there's a well, he'll explain it in a minute.
Sorry.
Remember when the root had no, oh, I'm going to say this wrong.
I'm sorry. I'm just.
He'll get to it.
But okay, what we're looking at here is a connecting vowel, a case ending.
If you're looking at the omega nu, that's connecting vowel and case ending. The nu tau participle morpheme dropped out
Okay,
because, well, there's a
well,
reason
that's okay.
because,
It dropped out, but it won't be
Yeah.
there.
that's right.
And then the morpheme, so the morpheme is the thing on the end after the case ending.
On the end. No,
It's in the middle.
it's in the middle.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Look
I'm
at the
not- That's my
ontos.
question. I'm
The
sorry.
omicron is the
What-
connecting vowel.
Okay, so let's look at one where everything's there.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to show you.
Ontos.
The ontos. The blue omicron is the connecting vowel.
Blue, it's green.
No. Are you looking at the ontos?
I don't know. It's green on mine.
Yeah.
Oh, it is blue. I can't tell the difference.
Are you, do you have trouble with that blue shade?
Well, I don't know. That's blue. Here it's green down here. I don't
Yeah,
know
but
what
that's different. Uh,
Okay,
Just look here. That blue
okay, that's
the
okay.
connecting
And what's the
vowel.
black?
The black nu tau is the participle morpheme.
Okay, all right.
The red is the case
So we
ending.
got, so the case ending is at the end after the.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, that's fine. That's what they told us in the first place when we started talking about this. I was getting confused because somehow I heard it differently. All right. So it's connecting vowel,
Participle morpheme, if there
Morpheme.
is one.
morpheme, and ending.
And then, yeah,
Okay, so what we're really being told here is, so it's new is the morpheme and there is no ending on the nominative.
oh, that's right, yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And by the way, that omega nu is one of the most common forms of the participle you'll find.
Sure.
It's really easy to spot. But don't get it confused with the omega nu of the genitive plural case ending of adjectives. That's for the noun system, not the
Okay.
verb system.
So I'm really kind of like, all right. I'm looking at page 289, where we were given a paradigm.
Yes.
And how does that relate to this?
Well,
Because we're only given 6 of them, and this paradigm has
well, if you look in the
a
box,
dozen.
the box area, that has the 6 that we're interested in.
Why don't we care about the rest?
We do, but he's only asking us to memorize those 6 because that's enough to get the whole pattern for the rest of them. See, when we learned,
Why is that?
well, when we learned the noun system, we learned the case endings for the dative and accusative and all the plurals. Well, we only needed to, the lexical form in the lexicon only gives the nominative and genitive.
Sure.
And it's the same thing here with participles. You only need that much to be able to figure out the rest. Do you remember when we studied the nouns way back?
Yeah, it's been a while,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. Okay.
And he told
I
us-
think I had to know all the endings.
Well, if you want to know the whole paradigm, yeah. But
Well, how
in the
am I going-
lexicon, look here, take any noun or adjective in the lexicon, you'll be given logos, lagu, ha. Logos is the nominative singular, lagu is the genitive singular, and
That's
ha
fine.
is the article
But
telling
how
you
do
what,
I know the other 12 endings?
because you learned them back before.
Oh, okay, but how did I learn these?
Because they're exactly the same as the nouns. Do you
Then why
remember
do I
the
need to-
paradigm for,
Then why do I need to list them at all? I'm sorry, I don't. Are these actually the same? This is a 313, and I
Mhm.
should already know this, although. I
yeah,
don't
the
rem- I
third
don't have it
declension
memorized.
nouns. had those identical
That's
endings.
fine. Then it's nice, I guess, to list then 6 of them, but he could have listed one of them. I'm not following this, or is that, do we need to see those 6 in order to identify it as a third declension now? I'm just not
Do you
sure I
remember
understand the logic here.
Do you remember the Omicron sigma ending, case ending for genitive singular? That occurs only for third declension nouns.
I don't see an, okay, you're talking about ontos?
Ontos, yeah. The last 2 letters are the case ending. And that case ending for genitive singular only occurs for third declension nouns.
Okay,
But you know all the rest of them because you learned that way back when.
so I'm gonna look at third declension and I know how
Yeah.
to decline it. That's
That's
fine.
right. Mhm.
All right.
Okay, where were we?
26.11 and in the first bullet.
Okay.
So,
Cousantes,
so present middle passive is not
uh,
declined with third declension?
present middle passive. No, that's second declension, I would think.
Okay, all right, all right,
We haven't gotten there yet.
all right. It'd almost be easier just to say those statements and then I'll go back and remember which one I'm looking up instead of. Okay,
Remember, this is chapter 26, which isn't going to give us all the details of how to parse the whole thing.
okay.
That we learn in chapter 27. This is still sort of an
This is like an
overview.
old-fashioned sermon. Tell me what you're gonna tell me. And then tell me what you're gonna tell it to me 3 times and then tell me what you told me again.
It's kind of like too, providing context so that the second time you see it, it'll fit a little better.
Yeah.
What page are we on?
294, top
Okay.
of the page.
Top of the page, first bullet. Aquan test is active, which means the word it is modifying is doing the action of the participle.
Akuamenoi,
Aquano,
amenoi.
aquano, yeah.
Akuamenoi.
Aquamanoi could be middle, which means the word it is modifying is doing the action of the participle in a way that affects the subject. And since we are learning deponency, if the verb is deponent in a certain tense, its corresponding participle will also be deponent. The participle
Erkamenoi.
ekamoianoi would be deponent because
Erkamoi.
ekamoi, the tense stem on which it is built, is also deponent. Okay.
Akuamenoi.
Manoi could also be passive, which means the word it is modifying is receiving the action of the participle.
Okay, that's sort of review.
And the aspect. The key to understanding the meaning of participles is to recognize that their significance is primarily one of aspect. This is the genius, the essence of participles. They do not necessarily indicate when an action occurs, time, past, present. Because there are 3 aspects, there are 3 participles. The present participle describes a continuous action and is formed from the present tense stem of a verb. The aorist participle describes an undefined action and is formed from the aorist tense of a verb. And the perfect participle describes a completed action with present effects or ongoing effects and is formed from the perfect tense stem of a verb. Okay, so I need to change in that
Yeah.
to
I see that you changed the terminology.
Yeah, but I didn't get as far as the table.
It's the same. You don't
Yeah,
need to
it's the
read
same.
that.
It
That's-
means it
No,
tells
but the
us,
more often I change it, the easier it's gonna be to remember it.
just cross off the one column because it's
Yeah.
the same.
There. There, that makes sense. Huh. All right, somebody else want to read for a while?
Sure, I could do that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
As an adjective, the participle agrees with the word it modifies in case, number, and gender. The man eating the chocolate is my brother. If this were Greek, eating would be nominative singular masculine because it is modifying man, that is anthropos, which is nominative singular and masculine. Okay.
Just read the English part.
Eblephaton. You want me to read? Okay.
Just read the English.
He saw the man who was teaching the koine, the was teaching part here. All right, because the participle didaskanta
Mhm.
is modifying anthropon, and because anthropon is accusative singular masculine, the didaskanta must also be accusative singular masculine. This is how an adjective behaves, so the grammar is not new.
Do you see that the kanta ending there
Yeah,
is
Mhm.
accusative singular?
right. That
Well, the anta, I should say.
should
not the
match
kanta.
our paradigm, right?
Mhm. Yeah, the omicron is
Yeah,
the connecting vowel, the new tau is participle morpheme, and the alpha is accusative singular.
Yeah, so it's fundamentally just that the participles follow previously established grammatical rules.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. 26.14, subject. A participle technically does not have a subject. However, because a participle must agree in case, number, and gender with the word it is modifying, it is a relatively easy task to discover who or what is doing the action of the participle.
Now, I think this is an important feature of participles. And in the translation that I've done, I've given you a copy of it. I've tried to show in the translation who the subject of the participle is.
When you say subject, do you mean antecedent?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is
But it acts as a subject of the participial phrase. But you'll see that when we do
Okay.
the exercises.
I see why you would call it that.
Mhm.
You could probably also call it the object of the participial phrase too, though, equally well.
Perhaps.
Okay.
You want to continue?
For example, if you were to say in Greek, he saw her while studying, the participle studying would be either nominative masculine if he was studying, or accusative feminine if she was studying. Greek does not use word order as does English in this situation. We've been through
We've
this.
talked about that.
In the example,
Autos
Autos.
eblepsa ton anthropon ton didaskanta tain koinein.
you can tell that it was not he, autos, who was teaching, but the man, anthropon, since the participle didaskanta is accusative. Don't think about that meant. So if he, autos, were teaching, the participle would be didaskon, which is nominative. So give me a second here. He who was teaching was the man.
And the own ending is nominative.
So what is the
masculine.
actual, he doesn't give us the English sentence, the English, so what is the sentence? I mean, I'm sorry.
It's the same one.
Autos.
Oh,
Oh, let's look at the actual Greek sentence because we don't have that. We haven't translated it. Autos ton.
Autos eblepsa,
Epilepsa.
ton anthropon,
Okay, so here the article.
didascone. It would be didascone instead of didasconta.
Didasconta modifies the man,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, didasconta modifies man, but
I'm sorry, yeah.
didascone modifies
I'm sorry.
autos.
Eblepse is what? I don't remember.
Eblepsa is he saw.
Okay, he saw. Oh, so he's putting into Greek the previous English sentence.
Yeah.
He saw the man, the teaching, right?
Yeah,
The teaching one.
yeah. It
So
would
that's
be
where we come up with who was teaching.
ha didascone instead
Yeah.
of ton didasconta.
Yeah, right, exactly. Following this, right?
You follow it, Ray?
Actually, I mean.
That makes
this-
perfectly good
this
sense. This
to
is easy.
me Is actually pretty quick to grasp because in this particular.
This easy makes it easy to see.
But in
actually.
this particular, for this particular part of the language, the Greek grammar is exactly the same as Russian grammar,
Is it?
exactly.
Great.
And it may just be because Cyril, when he gave the Russians their alphabet and kind of codified their grammar, came up from Byzantium, so he
Okay.
brought, he came up having working Greek
Yeah.
anyway, so that's probably
This
why
is-
he imposed that on
Yeah.
him, I think.
This is not hard, really, honestly. Before this, I actually,
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, I went and looked up how classical Greek does it, which is more complicated. And then I looked at what the Koine does, because I just went, and it was like, 2 pages of information. He takes a long time to explain something.
Yeah.
It's really not that complicated.
Mhm.
Well, several years ago, I had a Russian girl that was in one of the Greek classes I taught.
Mhm.
And she was saying a lot of the same things that you just said, because there are so many, it's a different alphabet for sure,
Right,
but the principles are the same.
right, and I think that's probably because Cyril, who kind of codified the written version of Russian,
Mhm.
came to Russia up the Volga River from Byzantium.
Mhm.
So he imposed a lot of aspects of Greek onto the Russian language.
When was that?
Sometime in the Middle Ages, but I don't know exactly when.
Okay,
It was definitely before the Byzantine Empire fell and was taken over by the Ottomans.
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
But
Well, then so that was about 1,000.
yeah, to say it was
It's fairly early.
kind of like toward the middle of early to middle of the Middle Ages. Or so
Okay.
the beginning to middle of the beginning to the. I hate repeating middle, but I don't know what else to do.
That's all right.
Definitely not the later Middle Ages.
All right. I'm sorry, should I keep reading?
Yeah, go ahead.
Other elements of the participle, 2615, modifiers, etc. A participle has other characteristics that it shares with verbs. It can have a direct object in the accusative. After studying her Greek, the student thought she had died and gone to heaven.
Oh, man.
Greek is the direct object of the participle studying and would be in the accusative. Let's sink in a minute. After studying her Greek.
Well, that's just,
So the participle here is the studying.
yeah, but
Her
the
Greek.
participial phrase can include things like an object.
So in the Greek, we won't have the after, but we would have the her Greek.
Yeah.
Yep,
Mhm.
okay. A participle can handle modifiers such as prepositional phrases, adverbs, etc. After studying quietly for a long time, I finally understood the paradigm. Quietly is an adverb, and for a long time is a prepositional phrase.
And by the way, that prepositional phrase is used as an adverb. Can you see that? Quietly and for a long time are both adverbs. The whole phrase is used.
The
as
whole
an-
verb is, yeah, the whole phrase is an adverb.
Mhm.
It's an adverb, yeah. Both modifying the participle studying. Okay. Negation. The negation "u" is normally used in the indicative. Since the participle is not an indicative form, participles are usually negated by "un."
May.
I'm sorry, may. Sorry, may,
That's interesting.
which has the same meaning as "u."
And that's true of other non-indicative moods. The imperative, the optative, the
Okay.
infinitives, and there's one other. Anyway, "u" is
Okay.
only used for the indicative mood.
This is why we have seen them mix. So is that generally why you see one or the other? Because
right.
of the verb that's with it?
Mhm.
We weren't told this until now. but
I know.
I
was
wondered
just
why
thinking
I'm
the same
seeing
thing.
may and
That
"u"
would
and
have
what.
been helpful to know when we
when
first
we-
got introduced to move.
That's
Yeah.
all right. Okay, I just wonder, why do you have two ways to say this? Okay. No 26.17, no personal endings. The participle does not use personal verb endings, which are only used with finite verb forms. Footnote 6.
Finite.
They are finite because the action of the verb is limited by its subject.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just store that away.
Yeah, I'll
as-
just
Yeah,
let
I'm
that
just
go.
trying
I'll
to
let that
think,
go away
what was the
somewhere.
subject?
26.18, parsing. Because the participle is a verbal adjective, there are 8 things to remember. I suggest you start with its verbal characteristics and then move on to its adjectival. Tense voice participle. Case number.
Go to
gender.
the footnote
Okay.
7, please.
A participle is not technically a mood, like the indicative. But for simplicity's sake, say it is a participle where you normally place the mood.
Okay. Remember in his parsing sheets here, he has column headings, and under mood, you either put indicative mood if it's a verb, or you put P if it's a participle. It's not really a mood, but that's where you put it in this chart.
So participles don't have a mood.
Right.
Okay.
Because it's no longer a verb.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? Okay, so tense, voice, participle. Okay, gotcha. Case, number, gender, lexical form, meaning of inflected form. All right. Akuantos, present active participle, gender, singular, masculine, from akuo, meaning hearing.
Yeah.
As an
And
example.
that's what I do in the chart here. For instance,
Okay.
akuon tone is genitive plural participle, masculine or neuter, accusative. Excuse me. Well, I think he said it better.
It's fine. Be sure to check with your teacher on how to parse participles. They may differ they may prefer a different order, and they may prefer for you to add the words imperfect,
No.
present,
Present.
aorist, or
Perfect.
perfect to the parsing.
Yeah.
Do you want us to add
I don't
those?
want the words perfective, imperfective, or combinative.
Do you want to know if they're present,
Present.
aorist?
Present, aorist, or perfect.
But that's already in there, right? I mean,
And here's
uh,
my parsing order.
let's look at your example here. If it's okay. You- So under here, yeah, that's under the voice anyway, right? So you ask us to parse it in the voice.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's not.
No,
No, that's not what I meant.
No.
The tense. It's in the tense.
this would be genitive, plural, participle, masculine, accusative. Um,
Participle. Why do we need
Wait a
participle
minute.
twice? Tense is what?
um,
What expected you wanted us to put the
This one.
tense there?
Let me get my mind straight here before I tell you. Okay, this is present tense. Um,
Oh, okay, present. What's in?
Actually, the,
Oh, you're putting both because we need to know
yeah,
both.
yeah, we
that's
need
good.
to know the present tense and we need to know the gender.
Ah, gotcha.
This is double duty column.
You following that, Ray?
So,
So in the parsing, we need to know both the tense and the gender, but the box indicates it's probably one or the other. We have to show both,
but
right?
the order, his order is different than what I prefer. My order is like this. Present tense first, then active voice is next. So I go from here, 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 and then genitive, plural, masculine.
Okay. I don't know.
This is how we're going to use his order for this, of course,
Yeah.
but when I do it here, I've got my order.
Okay. That
And
does help. Yeah.
This is the order I
I've been
use.
trying to follow the one that's on my interlinear.
Present active participle down to
lexicon.
plural masculine.
Yeah. All right.
Does that make sense
Does
to you,
this
Ray?
order that you use, does it match anything else? Is it what's in, would I find the same order in the analytical lexicon?
Well, I've been using that for so many
No,
years.
no, that's fine.
And
Because
I'm not sure if-
I've been trying to match what's in the
No, they
analytical
don't use,
lexicon.
they don't use the same order either. They've got this order.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to follow. Oh, you have a card on that?
Yeah.
Is
You want a
that from the
copy of
book?
this?
Yeah, I'd love a copy later. We'll
Okay.
get it later.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be really handy to have when I'm, because on my computer it spells it out, but on my phone where I'm usually looking at it, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I've kind of come accustomed to
I
figuring
made
it
a
out.
pocket for it in the book.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
a nice thing to have the hard copy because it's not on the,
Do you use this one?
No,
no.
Well,
no, I don't have.
anyway, I'll
Yeah,
make you a
it's okay.
copy of that.
And of course, if you're using like the interlinears you get on most of these places, they don't tell you what their order is. You have to dig somewhere. Okay, cool. That's great. All right. Back to the book, right?
Mhm.
Continuing. Be sure to check. I already read that. Okay, so the following chapters. I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
26.19. To make the participle easier to learn, I have separated its basic uses into different chapters. Chapter 27 deals with imperfect,
That's,
excuse me,
I'm
that's
going to call that
present.
the present.
Present adverbial participles. Chapter 28 discusses aorist adverbial participles. Chapter 29 covers the adjectival use of participles, and chapter 30 introduces the perfect participle.
Mhm.
You have now learned the majority of the grammar of participles. It remains only to learn their forms, and you already know all their case endings from your study of adjectives. If you are comfortable with the paradigm of pos, page 420,
I made a copy of it. and
the
pasted
forms
it in
of
my book.
participles will be easy.
You might want to do the same thing.
Oh,
I made a copy of it. That's one paradigm that would be helpful to memorize.
125?
Yeah.
I don't think it's. It doesn't look like.
It's right down in the bottom left here. page 425, this paradigm here. Your fingers on
Okay,
it.
because there's like a whole bunch of things on that page. so
Yeah,
I'm-
but that's the only part. So I made a copy of that, pasted in here.
313.
Yeah, it's a 313 edge too. You don't need to read the summary that just goes over the same stuff.
Okay. Guess that's it.
So I think that's enough for now. And if you want to do, well, no, we need to read chapter 27 before we do the homework. But you can look ahead if you want. What you might want to do is review adjectives and get their case endings fixed in your mind. Yeah, that would be a good thing. Back, what chapter was that?
I don't just need to make sure I know how to do it for POS.
Yeah,
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
don't think I need to study the chapter anyway.
okay. All right.
Well, no, that's fine. It's a good advice, Carl. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
try to read that chapter again.
Okay, well, we are,
He does have pause on here too. I was thinking it was.
Oh,
yeah, I
yes.
think it is on
Where
there
is that?
somewhere.
It's on the second page. It's in the top left of that page and then kind of toward the middle of that second block.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, under adjectives.
Yeah. Pass upon. Mhm.
And thankfully in colors that are easier to read.
Yeah,
Yeah, this color formatting is easier to deal with in the book, actually.
It's a higher contrast.
yeah. Blue and black look so much the same to me.
I know, and I mean, and not always, but the particular shade of blue
Yeah.
they chose. It's like, ugh.
Okay, well, I think we've covered enough for tonight.
Should we
But,
end our recording?
good night.
Good night.
Night, Gracie.